Welcome back, and in this episode, we are going to talk about the Utah Mammoth 2025-26 schedule and talk about how they can go ahead and try and get into the playoffs this year. For the Mammoth, they barely missed the playoffs last year, and with some retooling this offseason, including trading for Paterka and also just seeing where some of these other young prospects are going to develop and their young core of players hopefully getting better. This team really does have a chance to knock on the door of the playoffs and get in, and that should be an expectation, I think, of them. That's a goal that a lot of different players have said. So we're going to jump into it and see what it's going to take for them to be able to get into the playoffs, where some of their tough stretches might be, as well as also where they might be able to gain some ground and be able to hopefully start to project and keep on track towards that playoff goal. Now, we'll jump into the analytics a little bit later on what that would take as far as how many points and where those points will come, but also just jump into the nuts and bolts of looking at home and home stretches and also long road trips and that sort of thing. So with all of that said, let's just go ahead and jump into it. I'll have the calendar pulled up here on the side as we discuss it. But jumping into October, you can ignore those first two games that you see on your screen, the Kings and the Sharks. Those are their last two preseason games. They actually start the regular season on the road against a tough divisional opponent, the Colorado Avalanche, on the 9th. They'll continue to face two other divisional opponents on the road, but hopefully they can take those and then start their first homestand on October 15th against the Calgary Flames, which will most likely be a team that they will be fighting for a wild card playoff spot. Now, another thing I wanted to point out in October is that on October 21st, that Colorado Avalanche home game will be the start of their toughest 10-game stretch of the entire season. What did I do to determine what that toughest 10-game stretch would be? What I did is I took the current Stanley Cup champion odds and factored in away games, back-to-backs, 3 games in 4 nights, that sort of thing, and built out different odds for them to be able to win each and every game. This will help us give a track on how we can kind of see them project out towards for the entire regular season on that goal to get to 98 points. And then also what that did is help me determine where the hardest parts and the easiest parts of their schedule are going to be. So I can show you that schedule. We'll briefly scan through it at the end of this video, but just trust me when I say that this schedule is going to be pretty tough right from the get-go, starting on October 21st. So I think it's really important that the Mammoth get off to a pretty good start. You know, maybe they drop that first game at Colorado, but they really should be, heading into that road trip with, 10 points already in their back pocket. You'll see here that not only do they have the Avalanche at home, but then they go on the road against 4 other playoff teams to end October. They have St. Louis, Minnesota, Winnipeg, and then Edmonton. Moving into November, that schedule does not let up. Yeah, they come home, but it's against the Tampa Bay Lightning, another playoff team, and then they're back on the road for another 4-game trip. This time, Buffalo, which they should be able to beat at Buffalo, but then you have Toronto, then you have Montreal, and then Ottawa in back-to-back games right at the start of November. So really a tough stretch, a brutal stretch where you have 8 away games, and then the only thing sandwiched in between that is a tough home game against Tampa Bay. So really, Mammoth fans, don't be too sad if they sort of stumble out of the gate. That's why I said it's important for them to have those 8 to 10 points in their back pocket before they jump on that road trip. So moving on into November, you'll see here too that one thing that I thought stood out to me too was, facing Vegas twice. I feel like they did that last November as well. For some reason, we love to play Vegas in November, right around Thanksgiving. So you'll see here they have 2 home games November 20th, and then also on the 24th. But a lot of winnable games there in November as well. Then no game on Thanksgiving, so they'll stay home. But immediately after Thanksgiving, they jump on to the longest road trip of the season, where they face a bunch of again tough teams. They have Dallas, then they have back to back, then they're up to St. Louis. Moving into December, you then come back with some teams from the Pacific Division. You have San Jose, Anaheim, and then Vancouver and Calgary back to back. So that is the longest road trip of the entire season for them at 6 games. But what's interesting about this is that starting on December 1st, that actually starts the 10-game easiest schedule of the season. You'll notice here that and it's interesting that a lot of them are on the road, but they're winnable games. They have those away games are against 4 teams that did not make the playoffs. Granted, Calgary was right on the doorstep of it. And then they jump into some tough games against the home, but they're at home. They have the Kings, then they have the defending champions on December 10th, Florida, Seattle on the 12th, and then they're back on the road for another road trip, but again against non-playoff teams, so Pittsburgh, Boston, and Detroit. So that's going to be the Mammoths' 10-game stretch, where they should hopefully be able to make some points, but you never know with these away games. That can be kind of tough. We'll see how well they can do. I'll show you where they might be able to have maybe a slightly easier schedule. It was really close in determining the best or the easiest 10-game stretch for them. But statistically, according to my algorithm that I put in, this will be the easiest part of their schedule. The end of the year doesn't seem too daunting as well. However, they do have Winnipeg and Colorado, a nice break for Christmas, and then they are at home against Nashville. Jumping into the new year, you'll see that they are on the road. Right for New Year's, they'll be in New York. Maybe they'll go early and watch the Times Square ball drop. They'll be at the Islanders, then the Devils, and then the Rangers to start out. And then what we'll see here as we sort of go quickly through the next 3 months is they play a lot of home games, January through March. So jumping into January, starting on the 7th, is actually their longest homestand of the season. You'll see there that they have about almost a 3-week staycation there. But still against pretty tough opponents. You got Ottawa, St. Louis, but then you also have Columbus. One game that I am eyeing is that Toronto Maple Leafs on the 13th. I'm going to see if I can try to go to that one. I think that one would be a lot of fun. And then Dallas, St. Louis, and Philly. Then they go out onto on a road trip on the East Coast. If you are thinking of maybe trying to get out of the Utah winter and want to see some Mammoth hockey, might I suggest try making a trip to Florida. That would be a nice trip where you can fly out, hit up the Tampa Bay Lightning on the 26th, then make the 4-hour drive from Tampa Bay down to Sunrise, Miami area, and you could hit the defending champion Florida. I'm sure the tickets probably won't be cheap, and flying to Florida isn't the cheapest either, but who knows, maybe you could save up and that would be a fun trip to go to. But one thing that I did want to then call out is after that road trip, you'll see that as we jump into February, obviously there's not that many games because of the Olympics that are happening next year. All 4 of their games in February are home games. And then we jump into March, and we still have 1 home game to start. So really from January 7th to March 3rd, they will really only be on the road for about a full week, maybe, including travel, maybe 8 days. So really a good time for them to stay home, hopefully rest up, not have to be burnt out on all the trips. And so I think really as we look at, not to spoil the rest of the remaining of the schedule, but as you look in December and January, I think that's where, the Mammoth really need to hit it hard, really need to maybe catch up from that hurdle of a, first October and early part of November, try and catch up in the standings, and then in January, hopefully maybe get out, maybe be in second or third place in the Central Division, because the March and April, it's not a brutal or gauntlet of a schedule, but there's gonna be some ups and downs where, you'll be hopefully playing, 500 hockey, a little bit better than 500 hockey, and hopefully can then, kind of make it into the playoffs. Looking at March, one notable game that I would point out there, you see, is March 26th. Is that going to be Ovechkin's second and last time that he'll play in Salt Lake City? That might be a notable game to mark on your calendars as well. But quite a bit of winnable games, I would say. You have the Blackhawks. You have Columbus. Well, Columbus is getting better. I shouldn't count that as an easy victory, but you have 3 games against the Blackhawks. So hopefully you can, take all of those, sweep them. You have Pittsburgh. So I guess, take out Chicago in March is kind of a 50-50, month for them. And then jumping into April, hopefully the final stretch. Like I said, hopefully they're not jumping into April too far behind in the standings. Hopefully they've solidified, or have a comfortable lead in the wild card playoff race. But because you'll notice here that end part of March they had Edmonton, and then they play Edmonton again on the 7th, which might be a game that I try to go to as well. And then ending up with the last week probably being a critical week for them, at Calgary, again, fighting probably them for a playoff spot, maybe even Vancouver, who they play at the early part of this year, and then ending the season at home on the 16th against St. Louis, who beat them out for that last playoff spot last year. So, that might be someone who, again, they're going to be fighting for, and could that last game actually be the difference in who makes the playoffs? Only time will tell. But let's go ahead and now kind of jump into, again, some of the projections and the statistics. There's a website called Money Puck that I'll update these projections as we start to get data from them. Their algorithm's probably better than mine, but just for the sake of this video, I kind of wanted to plug this in. So now that we got done talking about the schedule, let's just end this video by looking at the graph that I've created that hopefully shows the story of what could be the Mammoth season, and where they need to gain points in order to keep track for that playoff goal. So there is a website called Money Puck that updates the odds for each individual game. It's really cool. I used it last year when I made this graph. They haven't updated their schedule with this upcoming year yet, so I plugged in my own algorithm, and I'll make some updates as this goes along. But I'll throw it up here right now. This kind of shows you over the course of the year where you can expect the Mammoth to hopefully make their biggest gains, and where they might also stumble throughout the season. So you'll notice here at the beginning of November, they, like I said, they should come out of the gates with 8 to 10 points before they hit that tough part of their schedule. You'll notice here at the end of October into the early parts of November, you'll notice that it's sort of a flat line on their points over the course of the season, and so that should be a little bit expected. It's okay if they stumble there during weeks 3 through 5 of the season, and then you'll see, as we slowly get into December, you'll see some pretty steep climbs. There's going to be a tough road trip in the middle part of December, but then another steep climb, and so that's where we should see that huge jump from about, I would say, 32 points to 50 points in that 3-week span, and we're going to need to see that in December in order to have a chance for the Mammoth to make the playoffs. Then towards the end of December, early part of January, that tough road game trip back east, and then you'll see a bunch of home games where they should hopefully gain ground as well. That flat line in February is just because of the 3-week layoff, so obviously there's no games being played, so that's why there's a little bit of a huge gap between when we don't expect to see many points in February. So, and then jumping into March, there's sort of another steep climb in that early part of the March, probably when they're playing the Blackhawks 3 times. And then slowly throughout the rest of the season, you can see it's a gradual climb, not as big in November and December. And then jumping into I'll throw in just some screenshots that will be easier for you to see. You can just kind of see the different games as well as the teams, where it's being played, and the odds that I placed in them being able to win that game based off of the quality of opponent, the back-to-backs, whether it's home or away, that sort of thing. Again, these are not like scientific numbers. They're just what I sort of came up on my own, and we'll update these throughout the season. And then the thing that I wanted to show is just my graph is based off of this, is where we can expect them to get the points, and then the pacing towards, like I said, probably around 96 to 98 points is where they're going to need to be in order to comfortably make the playoffs. Sometimes that last wild card spot is a little bit less, sometimes it's right there, so that will help keep them on track. So there you have it. I hope that was helpful as we just jumped into the Mammoth hockey schedule, and I'm excited to watch this team. This summer has just been a slog as we've been trying to get through all of this together, but excited for the season to start on October 9th, excited for the preseason to start beforehand, interested to see who they put out there on the ice and give some ice time too. So we'll try to do better at keeping you more updated and doing some more videos like this. But until then, guys, take care.